We are honored to introduce our three guest speakers to discuss the theme of purplewashing and pinkwashing's intersectionality in creating discrimination and privileges. Helene Agard, a feminist and social liberal coming from Denmark. She is a passionate leader with more than 10 years of experience in strategy, communication, organizational development, CSR, and stakeholder management. Since 2019, Helene has been boss ladying Diversity Factor, a management consulting firm focused on building inclusive working environments where diversity thrives for a large range of clients. Bahia Nar, a Tunisian communication and digital marketing expert and trainer. She is a mentor in the entrepreneurial scene and a part of several programs worldwide. Bahia is also a university professor, a podcaster, and an international speaker. In 2019, Bahia launched the Tunis chapter of Startup Grind, aiming to inspire and gather entrepreneurs. Cassandra Lopez, a Mexican marketeer, who has been working in Europe since 2020. She has a bachelor's degree in marketing and management, a master's in advanced marketing, and a master's in growth hacking and marketing automation. Cassandra has worked in marketing and sales with companies such as L'Oreal, Eli Lilly and Company, and most recently at Google in the European HQ. And here is the host of the WOMENTUM Digital Saloon, Katie Gallus. She comes from Germany. Katie is a journalist and a storyteller with a massive crush on all things digital. Katie had worked for German public broadcasters Deutsche Welle, SWR, ARD, and ZDF.
Welcome again to the Digital Saloon, WOMENTUM in its 7th edition. And it's great to have you all back on board as we're always trying to debate very contemporary topics concerning women, concerning IT, culture, and digitalization. And of course, always with high-scale guests and experts. And the WOMENTUM series of the LEAD initiative aims to introduce our partner organizations to give important conversations the time and the space that needs to be held and of course to be discussed with enough space and time. I'm very pleased to be your moderator. I'm a journalist. My name is Katie Gallus and I'm very thrilled to be part of the WOMENTUM and the Digital Saloon series. We want to hear more about the challenges of our speakers' activism. We'd like to understand more what keeps them going and what of course helps them to develop a better understanding of the challenges that we are debating. And of course, what will foster the dialogue that can lead to recommendations. Today, we talk about the intersectionality of purplewashing and pinkwashing in creating discrimination and privileges and activism regarding gender-based violence. I'm so happy and I'd like to hear more about from my guests. First of all, how to identify purplewashing and pinkwashing and why is it so offensive? And second of all, are these marketing and the political campaigns contributing to purplewashing and pinkwashing? And if so, how do we realize that? And of course, how can we stand up against it? So gender parity, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, it is an important standard to be achieved by a society in which men and women are treated equally. That's also shown by the Sustainable Development Goals, the so-called SDG number 5, where it comes to gender equality. However, we are still far away from reaching the objective because there are conduct such as gender discrimination and expressions, and purplewashing is among them. So these are my guests today. I am very thrilled. Here is the trailer.
Purplewashing and pinkwashing are well-known expressions used nowadays to define diversity of marketing and political strategies intended at promoting people, companies, associations, and other organizations through an appeal to gender equality. Gender parity is an important standard to be achieved by a society in which men, women, and minority groups are treated equally. All those rights were recognized in the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action in 1993. However, almost 30 years after, challenges facing women and minority groups today are essentially the same as they were a long time ago. This is why, in the 7th edition of the WOMENTUM Digital Saloon, we are giving the floor to our high-level guests to tell their stories and to understand together the different aspects of purplewashing and pinkwashing's intersectionality in creating discrimination and privileges.
coming back now with these beautiful guests. Again, with me today is Helen Agard, Bahiana, and Cassandra Lopez. A wave to all of you based in the whole world. You know, we have different perspectives, and of course here, an all-female panel. I'm very thrilled for that. So thank you again for being on the show. Helen Agard is with us. She's a passionate leader with more than a decade years of experience in strategy, communication, and organizational development. Helen, thank you so much for joining us. Bahiana is also with us. Bahia is a communication and digital marketing expert and trainer, and she has a very deep insight in the startup scene. So we are thrilled to hear more about that. Bahia, thank you also for joining. And last but not least, Cassandra Lopez, a Mexican marketer who has been working in Europe for a very long time and working with big brands, just to name a few, L'Oreal, Eli Lilly, and currently with Google. So very thrilled to be on the show with you as well. Thank you so much to all of you joining us. Maybe we can start because, you know, with a definition, because I thought about it, purple washing and pink washing. There are a lot of definitions in the web. What is your definition, just to set the tone and to get a definition from your perspective? Bahia, maybe I can start with you as a marketing expert. What is purple washing and pink washing when it comes to your work?
Let's talk about the washing, color washing in general. So as you know, there are now many causes that people are fighting for, NGOs or random people are fighting for related to equality between gender, between ethnics, etc., etc. We have black washing, but also related to women or all the LGBTQ plus communities, pink washing, purple washing. So it's when a brand is using a cause, just pretending to care about that cause or working on that cause, just to, let's say, do some bling bling on their image and make the public think that they are LGBTQ plus community or gender equality. But when you go deeper inside the company or inside that institution, you find that what they are showing outside is far from the reality, and they don't believe in those causes. So they don't do what they are.
They don't do what they are preaching. Is that the correct sentence, what I got? Thank you, Bahia, for this first introduction and definition. Cassandra, pink washing and purple washing. You're an expert in marketing. What is the definition that comes, of course, from the books, but also from your experience?
Okay, I think I could agree with Bahia because there's not only pink or purple, it's green, it's black, it's in all colors, and it's business and government strategies that profit with vulnerability. Because it's sad, but nowadays we are not just marketing products, but we are marketing even fights, feelings, oppressions, discriminations, fights, identities. And it's some maneuvers with the aim of selling themselves as feminist, as eco-friendly, as pro-rights spaces. So they turn to these colors without actually promoting social transformation, warranting the rights of these communities, or I don't know, it's just profiting with vulnerability of these people.
Thank you. Helen, of course, the question goes also to you, the definition of purple washing and pink washing. And maybe you have also an example where you're based in Copenhagen. Is there something that is very visible in the streets, for example, that you can actually tell us a little bit more? What is in reality purple washing and pink washing, and what's the difference?
I agree with Cassandra and Bahia in their definition of just washing in general. And I think you can say, well, is there walk behind the talk? So is what you're branding and marketing, are you actually doing that work internally also in your organization? We're coming up on October now, but in August, we had Pride Week here in Copenhagen. Excellent purple washing opportunity and pink washing opportunity also. Pride is, in my book, a very personal but also very joyous celebration, and it's a week here in Denmark, and I love the parade. I love standing there with my son and seeing the parade walk down in full colors. And there's, of course, also something that is very valuable in having a lot of corporate sponsors walking in the parade. we know from a lot of these internal employee resources groups that it actually means a lot to the different employees that they can see their company brand walk through with pride. And that's a good thing. However, that's 1 week a year. What happens the 51 other weeks a year in that organization or in that company that is walking in that pride parade? How do they work, for example, with the LGBTQ plus inclusion? How do they work with ensuring that this is a safe space? How do they ensure that it's not only gay people who come out of the closet, but it's actually normalized so that we also view heterosexuals as somebody who comes out of the closet, and so forth? So is the work that goes on, the sponsorship, the branding, the big parade, the hallelujah that goes on in Pride Week, is that also going on the 50 other weeks per year? And I think that's a great example of just one of the washing opportunities out there. So, yeah.
And from your perspective, do we speak enough about the washing and about, of course, this particular phase and this particular week when it comes to Pride Week? We also had it here in Berlin. But I have the feeling that we don't talk about this expression of purple washing or pink washing enough, that it's actually also a topic in the boardroom. What is your experience, Helen?
I actually am seeing a lot of companies being quite, I would not say afraid, but quite observant of this potential washing thing going on, that they are observant about the fact that they can be accused for washing, that there is a potential risk with doing these things, because if they are not transparent about their other activities or their other data and so forth, they will potentially be accused of washing. It's not like it's a conversation going on in the boardroom, but it is a conversation that often is going on internally within HR, the D&I team, and also in collaboration with the marketing team, at least for the big companies, the big corporations walking through. So I am seeing a heightened awareness around this, that this is something that we need to be aware of. However, from the corporate stance, sometimes you do have the really, really irritating thing that there's something you can't communicate about. You can be in conflict with legislation. You can be in conflict with different stakeholder relations and so forth. That doesn't allow you to be externally transparent. So there is always this kind of walking an incredibly thin line in terms of these activities also. So there's a conundrum on one side in terms of us being exposed to the potential washing as consumers or as stakeholders to the brand, but there's also a conundrum internally with the stakeholders internally of how much they can actually tell. And a lot of this work is I hate this word, but it's a journey. Diversity and inclusion work is not something that is fixed overnight. This is a lot of unlearning of different discrimination and biases throughout history. So imagining that companies and organizations will be able to fix this during a Pride Week, that is also just
that's crazy. That's not realistic.
Either, so.
No. Helen, thank you so much for these insights. But yeah, I'd like to come in with you again, because of course you're the expert when it comes to advertising, as all of you. But when we talk about the corporate side, we also have to talk about the target audience. Are they aware of purple washing and pink washing when, for example, they see these big corporates and when they see they coming up on the Pride, are they aware that there is, of course, the threat of purple washing in one case or another? Or do we also have to talk more and more with the target audience?
Basically, in general, people in the target audience is aware, because sometimes it comes out of nowhere, especially when you see on internet there are some funny memes during the Pride Month, like showing the marketing advertising team, let's have a post on social media on the Pride Month, whether you walk on the Pride Month, whether you are a sponsor, or sometimes offering t-shirt, or sometimes just putting the LGBTQ plus flag on your building. So yes, the people are aware that what you are doing. Are you in your, for example, in your CSR strategy working with the minority or offering something? Or as Helen said earlier, inside your company, are there any inclusion, let's say politics, or is it really a safe space? Because sometimes it goes just like say the basic, is it a safe space? Is there some bullying or some harassment? Is it punished like beyond saying yes we are inclusive and we include? Or also when you are show you on your advertising whether a woman or let's say a gay couple, so is it part of what you are selling, of what you are your storytelling, of the values of your brand? Or saying, okay, let's be inclusive, we're gonna have a TV ad, let's bring women, let's bring people, Muslim people wearing the hijab, let's bring African American people, let's bring a gay couple, and voila, we have the whole check the whole boxes of inclusivity. And I think the best example that we saw was the bad example of not to do with the Pepsi when they brought Kendall Jenner. It was, when you think of the idea, yes, you want to target the Gen Z, that they are more aware of those problematics and more aware about those values, and they brought them a famous celebrity model. They had the Indian, they had the woman with the hijab, they had the gay couple, they had the colored people, and they had checked all the boxes. But how they put the storytelling and being aware of the history of America with police brutality, with all the things that happened, with Martin Luther King, it was a backlash, and the company has to take off the video offline and to apologize, but you still also, what goes on the internet stays on the internet, and you can still see the video. So yes, so to summarize, when you are going for a cause, just be aware of the cause, the history beyond the cause, what happened, how, if there are people that suffered or were killed or made sacrifice to that cause, and just don't put yourself high, I'm taking a spot and I'm gonna just talk about it. Be more deep than that, dig more, and try to not just surf on the trend, but be in the center of that topic.
Thank you. Cassandra, I'd like to bring you in here, because of course when we talk about authenticity and also communicating towards the Gen Z, so what is your stake on purple washing and pink washing? And of course we really walk the talk, as Helen was mentioning it earlier. Maybe you can bring us in conversations that you have with clients, what is actually on their mind and what you see as dangerous when it's just a once in a while happening for a specific moment, as we mentioned the Pride Week. So how important is it also to talk about walking the talk and to talk about values when it comes to a sustainable support of marginalized groups?
Okay, well, I think that you just hit the spot with the keyword as authenticity, because that's the word. Like, we have a huge responsibility as marketeers, and brands have that responsibility, because it's known that media and advertising have the power to influence the perspectives and even the behaviors. So I also like that you mentioned targeting, because yes, some companies sadly use the pink washing and purple washing to segment the market based on these operations with the only purpose to sell more. It's like, okay, I have this group of people, it's a niche market and it's a huge market, so I can target to them easily, I can reach to them with these kind of messages, and I can make them buy my products. And that's when it's not authentic, because they are aiming to sell. But I mean, the problem is not just selling, because I mean, it's companies. Companies need profit to survive, and companies, of course, need to sell to survive. But the problem is that when they do these kind of practices, they are not empowering women, they are not helping the communities, they are not helping anyone, and they are only looking and seeking for their interests. Yes, I saw Helen raise her hand.
Yeah, Helen, you were raising. Why is this not helping at all? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, but I don't know if you remember, but 10, 15 years ago, Dell wanted to have more female consumers, so they marketed a pink computer. Because we all know that if a woman is to go out and buy a computer, it has to be pink, right? And you can just imagine the room with the white dudes in it sitting there. Okay, we want to sell more computers to ladies. Let's make it pink, right? Because then the ladies are just going to pour out their money and start buying computers. I'm like, and I think that was one of the first examples of pinkwashing, which is so bad. Because yes, Cassandra has a totally valid point. Yeah, companies need to sell in order to make a profit, because if they don't make a profit, they can't employ the people who then can't. And then unless we want to do a whole conversation about the capitalistic system, let's just have that as a baseline. That yeah, there needs to be a profit in some shape or form, but it's just bad sales. It's bad marketing and it's bad sales. So it's not only it's not authentic, but it's also really poor business. And that's the reason why you have to have that internal walk the talk. Because if you want to expand to a new market, for example, a female consumer, it's like 50% of the population. So I get why it's not that. Then at least have females in your marketing team, have females in your sales team, have females in your product development team. And that can both be cisgendered females, but it could also be trans women and so forth. So you at least internally understand the complexity of the consumer that you're trying to attract. And again, match that up with age diversity, because there's a big difference between being me, 40-year-old woman, single mom, to a 60-year-old. To being a young lady, 25, just starting her career, to being my mother on 72. So it's about harvesting that diversity internally in order to make better products, first of all, but that you're also better at selling at the end of the day. And that's also walking the talk. And that is also what gives authenticity to the brand, as Cassandra is talking about.
Cassandra, please come in here.
Yeah, I love that Helen added that, because marketing and all the brand managers know that women have like 70 or 80% of the household purchase decisions. So we have to market these women because they have power in the decisions. So that's when we have to be smart and authentic. Indeed, in marketing, we have the company cost fit, which means how well a company's philanthropic actions align with mission, vision, and values. And these actions have to be seen as a positive phenomenon of constant change, not only an effort to sell. It's not another marketing strategy. It's me aligning my values, what I am, what I stand for, what I want to do tomorrow, what I want to help in all the actions that I take with my company and my employees. So I will include women in my strategies. I will include women in my board of members, because I care about them. I care about their decision-making processes, and I want to take them into account. So I really love that you jumped in, because I really agree with that.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I think we do agree on that, but the question is, why is it not happening, right? Why are we still living in 2022 and talking about something that is so obvious, but obviously difficult to realize? Bahia, and coming, in from a startup perspective, with talking to a lot of young entrepreneurs and young companies, is it easier to have diversity and equality in a startup scene than in older setups of companies?
Now we are trying to be inclusive. Some investors are trying to be inclusive and wanting to have more women as startups or female as a female founder. So sometimes they choose that startup and either if they are competing with other male startups, male founder, and they choose the women just because, let's say, what they call it, and I hate that word, positive discrimination, because at the end it's discrimination. So they chose it based on her gender, not because her ability to make a business. And just for PR, they do photos, they have their data and their numbers on their report, and maybe the company will fail like in 2 months. So, or sometimes we bring women just to be a co-founder just also to apply to some programs and to be appealing to some PR or to some investors. So this is also a problem that is happening in, I think it's worldwide, not only in Tunisia or in the MENA region. And when you talk to investors, they say, we want to invest in female founders, but we don't find. The other hand, you find female founders saying, we don't find investor. And that's why I said the feedback loop, that always somebody pointing at the other. Well, the other side, they're looking for funds. There are funds. The others are looking for female funders, but they don't find us. There is a gap between the two of them. Another maybe, let's see, maybe trend, or let's see it nicely as a trend, the myth, like I'm gonna call it the myth of the boss ladies. So we saw this all empowerment and female empowering female. At the end, it became, and I see it in some scenes, that it became like a sect, like they are working together and not being inclusive. Like we are female empowering each other, and the other can stay out, or the main can stay out. And sometimes it reminds me of the movie, the famous movie, The Mean Girls. So there are a small group, like you see that when you saw them and the movies related with about high school and the mean cheerleaders. Sometimes, yeah, I'm trying to make it a little bit funny, but it's the reality. Like you see them like working together, not being inclusive with other, and saying, we are female founders, empowering other female or working with other female. So yes, there's another maybe that says the gaps existing earlier created this myth, and you have to be a boss lady, and you have to wear a blazer and high heels and have a mat. So we created a certain image, and sometimes the female founder or the female entrepreneur don't see themselves on those images, so they kind of lost.
Thank you, Bahia. Helen, when we talk about the so-called sisterhood and the boss woman sisterhood, and of course, when it comes to supporting each other and also relocating resources and bridging the gaps, are we living in a supportive environment of female bosses, or would you disagree and say there is so much more to do? Because of course, there's this maybe the rise of a few boss women, but still a lack of support.
I think you started out by posing a question just previously by saying, okay, so what is overall wrong with this? Why hasn't there been any progress? We're in 2022, and now you pose this question of whether or not there is an actual sisterhood. And as Bahia just stated, there's not. I think and maybe I'm going to be thrown under the bus now, but there is a word for this. It's called patriarchy. And as long as patriarchy exists, this is the grounding structure that will, in some shape or form, rule us all. And I think women have internalized the structures of patriarchy to a really, really high extent. This is also why Bahia says, well, if you are to be a boss lady, you have to show up in heels, you have to wear the power suit and so forth. I remember growing up in the 80s, my mom worked in the financial sector. If she didn't have long hair and wore a lipstick, I would have assumed that she was a man because of the suits she wore, the shoulder pads and everything. Yves Saint Laurent designed the power suit for women in the 80s, basically mimicking a man's suit. So I think we lack role models to show the diversity that we can have also in that. And when we see leadership, we see a certain default type, and then we try to mimic that. When we see a tech startup type, we try to mimic that. I remember when I started out in entrepreneurial life, I had this idea that entrepreneurs and startup types were these techies in a hoodie, laying on a couch, doing machine learning all night and drinking Coca-Cola, right? And here I was, a 37-year-old woman with a child, and it was like, I did not have that role model. So I think as ladies, and this goes both for cis and trans, we have to broaden that space, first of all, but also take into account that there are more than just the ladies. There's also the non-binary. How do we actually create an inclusive environment where we can be truly fully ourselves? And that is gonna take a lot of unlearning and a lot of new learning before we are in that space.
Do we talk too much also, Helen, about men and women? And as I mentioned, we want to have this inclusive language. So where do we actually talk with the community of the LGBTQI plus community to actually bring them also into the makerspace, into the change makers room?
I think a lot of our conversation is still very much binary. It's men, women, and they're often white when we address these issues, and they're straight, and nuclear family with a good education and so forth. It's basically a lot of privilege in that conversation, and basically a lot of privilege in those stereotypes or defaults. But again, this is probably how we were socialized. Looking back 20 years, for example, when I was in school, I was taught not to see color. I was taught that everybody is equal and you shouldn't see people's color. Now I'm out here running a consultancy agency where I train in inclusive leadership, and I tell people to see color. I want them to recognize that there's a difference between being white and black and brown, and there's certain privileges attached to that. And that can be really, really hard. And I recognize this for myself. 20 years ago, I was taught not to see it. And now we have to learn that we have to see it. So I'm positive, and I'm hoping that this is moving. But yes, we need to broaden that space. And we need to stop talking about minorities as somebody who has to normalize into our conversation, but instead learn as majorities that we don't lose anything by giving access and by broadening the space and making the minority just a normal part.
Thank you. Cassandra, I'd like to bring in you here and following the thread a bit. How is actually marketing also how is marketing having the possibility to support here in bridging these gaps that we were just tackling on? Where do you see it as a marketing expert, and of course from your experience with big companies, but also with your community?
Okay, I think that right now we have kind of this problem, as Bahia was mentioning, that we tend to link power of female with something that we want to be. Like, it's the more power you have, the more you are going to consume. The more money you have, the better brands you'll wear, the higher your heels. So we are linking female power to consumption. And indeed, it's said that women that have a low self-esteem are more loyal to products. Indeed, the female beauty brands, their power relies in the fact that they can bring the remedy of beauty. So it's super hard to think about it. Like, they are really finding these vulnerabilities, and they want to make women feel powerful by making them feel they are not enough without the product. So I think this is super hard, and nowadays it exists. Maybe you girls can help me with this, but it exists femvertising, which is some advertising that aims to empower women with powerful messages. But it's hard because we are in a gray line. It's easy to fall from that. It's easy to fall from empowering women to making them feel powerful by buying my products. And this is hard to make understandable for the brands, because they don't have this feeling. They are like, yes, I'm showing women, I am not being sexist, I am showing Black women working, I am showing them talking, speaking out, doing sports, for example, or doing not female stuff, but by doing that, they are being not so good, because they are looking for the profit. They don't want to help. They are thinking that by giving profits, and once again, it's the authenticity what we need. It's like, okay, you have this kind of cool messages, you are trying to empower women, but you are doing it because it's the right thing to do, not because you see that you are selling more. Because also, talking about advertising, there's an agency, it's called Fem Media Advertising. I don't have the right name, but they prove that women buy more when they see women, when they can relate to the brands. So it is actually moving the needle towards sales. But the problem is, are you doing this because you are selling more, or are you doing it because it's the right thing to do, because you really care about your audience, and you are not only trying to make them feel good by buying your product, but you are trying to make them feel good by helping them raise their voices.
Thank you, Cassandra. But here, I'd like to come in with you here now. Absolutely. How do we bridge the thin line between, marketing, selling, but also standing up for the values?
Maybe I will just finish what Cassandra was saying. And we are seeing more trends and more in advertising, like we are shifting from the stereotype. For example, we see advertising ads, especially in the Muslim or conservative communities, where the female has all the houseworking and housekeeping tasks. So we find some ads that they are showing a man cooking to his wife and kids, or a man doing the dishes. Yes, it's good. It can bring another image. It's bold from the brand, especially, as I said, in conservative communities. But the whole process has to follow. And I explain, like, for example, when you go to the point of sale and you go to buy that products, and it happened, there is a brand like showing those kind of advanced, let's say, ads, and when you see their catalogs, and when you go to their point of sale, for example, for the Mother Day, they are having promotion on dishwasher, on those kind of products are targeted for women. So yes, you are in your ad, let's say on TV advertising, in showing a progressive or equality, let's say, between men and women in the house keeping activities. But deep down, we see that you are always still, let's say, old school, trying to promote dishwasher during events such as Women's Day. So beside the fact that you can celebrate the better Women's Day, not doing dishes, for example. But that's why I said the whole process has to follow. Or you go to the point of sale and you find a nice lady wearing a nice skirt, like a women object, just to trying to sell you the products. So yes, like in marketing, of course, it's the ad, but you have to see all your channel, whether communication or in distribution, and they have to be on the same level and on the same page. There's no gap between what you are promoting on for the people and what they are seeing in real life when you go face to face to your team members. And to go back, sorry, it was the point of view I wanted to contribute to what Cassandra was saying, but to go back to your question, can you please quickly remind me what was it?
Sure. How do we actually manage, but you touched upon it already, the thin line between standing up for values and also, of course, realizing these values within the structures of the company, and not just selling and marketing for selling. So this, Cassandra was saying it's a thin line, of course, right now also for the companies. So maybe from your perspective, Bahir, and also from your perspective, Helen, in a second, what would be helpful, and what is helping towards a sustainable marketing? Because we will not get rid of marketing. I think that would be not realistic. But how do we make it just better? That would be also a question. Bahir, maybe you can include your answer with the two questions now. Thank you.
I will just answer quickly. So first of all, do your homework. As the example we were mentioning earlier about Pepsi, or there is another campaign that comes to my mind in France, the clothing brand called Cameo, trying to empower women, and on their e-commerce website they put photos of models with bruises. So they were women victims of violence, domestic violence. And at the end of the website, you find the green number, of course, to call for help, or the NGOs. When you see it like that, yeah, it's a good campaign. It's bold from the brand to show models with bruises, etc. But they were backlash because what was some of the public saying that they are glorifying violence against women and putting it out there, and even, yeah, you can live a happy life with blue bruises all over your faces and even become a mother. So yes, do your, or also what was saying that putting those images out there online, so women that they are fighting for their life sometimes with an abusive husband or boyfriend, like seeing out loud, like it's simple, yeah, I'm wearing a hoodie, like you can buy it for 15 euros and I have my bruise on my face. So it's like normalizing the violence, not putting it under the spotlight. So to go back, just do your homework, understand the, let's say, the deep sides of the question, of the problem, how it's working, what's the history on that country, about the culture, what legally sometimes is legislation. So you are saying something on your ad and the legislation on your country is saying everything. So do your homework, first of all. Cover yourself legally, historically, psychologically, all the points. The other things, just be honest with yourself. You can't say something out loud in the inside of your company. People can express themselves online anonymously, and everything can goes off on the company with a simple tweet, anonymous tweet. So don't underestimate the power also and the freedom speech of your employee, even if they don't do it out loud with their name and their identities. And also what you do on the whole channel, whether your distribution channel to your point of sale, online, on Facebook, on billboard, or sometimes even on the radio when you participate on some debates, or even your employees, because sometimes what happened when companies were back under fire, their CEO or some manager did some inappropriate thing that was on camera, or sometimes just posted a racist or misogynist okay, a bad tweet on social media, and how the whole company was under backlash. So sometimes you have to work inside to educate your team about what's good and what's wrong, like little kids, what's offensive, what's not, where are the fine lines before starting to doing ads and looking for models for inclusivity.
Thank you, Vahia. Helen, educate the own team. This is a keyword that I'd like to pinpoint back to you, because of course from your consultancy you do that. You just mentioned you help people to see color again, although of course, you know, to be aware of what's going on in the different communities. Maybe you can actually give us a glimpse. How optimistic are you right now?
I think a year ago I wouldn't be so positive as I am right now in my answer. And of course, this is also based from where I'm sitting in Copenhagen, working primarily with Danish companies or headquarters Danish companies, but with an international reach. But what I am starting to see is that companies are, at least those who are ambitious, are actually starting to try to walk the talk. So they are looking at what we call their equity level, looking at their structures, looking at their foundation, and thereby also looking how to work with diversity and inclusion in a systemic way. So that diversity and inclusion is not just about what goes on in HR, for example, but is also what is going on in marketing, what is going on in product development, what is going on in R&D, and so forth, in finance, in IT. This has to do with them being pressured in their talent pipeline, of course, but it also has to do with them being pressured from their customers and their clients that is also expecting them to work on this. And the good thing about it is that I'm also seeing a turn away from this being about the business case, this being about making money, but actually trying to relay this into trying to be a better place for people. So because it's the right thing to do. So something is happening, and a good example, I think we saw that in the States this summer when the Supreme Court cancelled women's right to abortion, basically turned down Roe versus Wade. What I saw was that a lot of international companies, both American, but also some of our own clients, going out and saying, well, we have operations in the US. We will make sure that our health insurance covers that our female employees, if they need an abortion, can go to another state and have that abortion if needed. And we will pay those costs for that. That is a a very good sign of a structure moving, of an equity level that is being placed firmly. But I'm also seeing the same thing going on here. For example, we have a lot of companies who have outsourced their IT operation to Poland, where female rights, LGBTQ rights are extremely under pressure. They are now working at, okay, how can we support our employees in Poland against these legislation coming out of the government in Poland? Can we either lobby, can we pull out of our operation in these countries? Or can we, for example, move our minority groups of people in Poland to different locations and give them work there, so they are supported either in terms of their sexuality or their gender or what it can be. At the end of the day, it's sometimes hard, because I also have companies who have a very clear strategy on diversity and inclusion, where everybody is to be included, and then they operate in countries where LGBTQ, for example, is illegal, and you can get killed for being a member of the LGBTQ company. Am I going to say to that company, pull out of that area of operation? They're basically violating their own human rights policy. Human rights says that everybody is free to love who you are, but we have areas in the world where it's illegal to do that. So should companies pull out, or should they stay and work for the betterment of it? I do not have the answer for that. But I do see a shift in actually trying to at least help in communities where there is pressure from legislation from the different states. And that is a positive sign.
Yeah. Do you also see that companies take over more and more responsibility, concerning standing up for the rights, when it's also coming to stand up against a country's government or country's law? So how do you see that shift in the perspective of, let's say, entrepreneurs and of course companies, to say, okay, no, we also stand up for democracy in a way, for inclusiveness, for inclusion, for our values. So let's talk also with policymakers from a specific government or opposition. So where do you see that openness for debate?
I do see companies taking on more responsibility, and I think one of them is a business argument. If you don't regulate yourself, somebody else is going to regulate you. So it's easier to regulate yourself before you get regulated by others. You're going to win on that one. Then you're ahead of the market. But I also see a failure in our political system. Now, take the climate crisis. Now, fighting for climate crisis is, first of all, a very privileged thing that you're able to do to fight for a better climate. But with that being said, we have a global world, global politicians who have not been able to deal with a crisis that we have known about for 20 years at least. Nothing has been done about it from a political standpoint. Whether or not it's the UN, whether or not it's the EU, or whatever, NATO, whatever it can be, nobody has effectively done anything about the climate crisis. Now, my former employee is AP Møller-Mærsk. It's a shipping company. Shipping stands for at least 2% of the global CO2 production. It's polluting more than ever in terms of our climate. Now, my old employee has decided to invent a new fuel to combat climate change. That's a company taking on a huge amount of responsibility and innovating in a way that we should have expected our politicians and our policymakers to do 20 years ago. Now that responsibility is being taken over by companies, and that is basically because, and that's my opinion, that I feel that the political system in many ways on a global sphere has failed us and is still failing us. And that also goes to when we talk about diversity and inclusion. We talk about the leader of the free world just rolled back women's right to choose over their own body. You can't call that a democracy anymore.
Yeah, fair point. Absolutely. Thank you, Helen. Cassandra, from your perspective, and of course from a younger generation, I would say, Gen Z, how also, of course, do you request as a young generation a very political stake on on companies' policies when it comes to, as we said, purple washing, pink washing, but also climate crisis, tackling climate crisis, standing up for rights. So can you give us a little bit of a view from the talent pipeline side, as Helen also mentioned that, what do you expect from companies that you, as a talent, that you're willing to work for?
Now that you mention all the political part, I think that nowadays political parties seek to appear progressive by disguising themselves as inclusive. It's like they want to create an optical illusion because they think that if they have a female or a gay leader, they are actually supporting the populations. It's like what we were saying about the fake advertisements, that yes, my product can help you feel more powerful, then get it. So it's like, okay, my political party is led by someone like you, so join it just because of that, not because I want to help you or I want to empower or make benefits. It's just like they think it's as simple as that. And I think that's a problem, thinking that it's as simple as that. The real pro-feminist and LGBTIQ campaigns that have a genuine concern of social issues, they don't think that they just have to launch new products or set a new leader for their groups. It's like they are really seeking and doing stuff in order to make better opportunities for everyone. And it's now that we mentioned the climate change and everything, it's like looking for the well-being of everyone, because it's not about feminist or being gay or lesbian or black or Asian. It's because we are humans and it's basic human rights. So we want companies and political parties to seek for the well-being for all, like the general well-being, not only, again, segment and target the market in these groups just to reach out to them easily. It's like do things for the well-being of everyone, not only try to be blind with all of them and try to support more one because you think it's the easiest way to reach to them. Imagine that today we have the option, we have two different products, they do the same, they cost the exact same, but I know that this is doing something for the world. This is maybe taking some of their profits to a beneficial cause. Well, this, they don't say it. Maybe they are doing it, but they don't say it. So I'll buy this because I want to help. I care about this, and it's okay, maybe it's marketing, but it's marketing that it's actually doing something for better. So they are selling more because they are a company and they need to live off money, but also part of that money is contributing for the well-being of everyone, not only their own interests. So I think that nowadays we are more into that, like, okay, I have these two products, they both do the same, they both cost almost the same, but one is doing something different. And that difference is the one that will make me finish my purchase decision.
And it's with this difference to make a difference. Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you, Helene Agar. Thank you to Bahia Nar and Cassandra Lopez for your insights and for your, a quick look on your desk, what keeps you busy, and of course, what is actually you driving towards this topic, fighting up, standing up for these values and for the questions that we touched upon. Thank you so much to all of you. All the best for you. And dear listeners, dear audience, it's great to have you back on board. Of course, if you have any questions or comments, comment below or send us an email. We are thrilled to hear from you. Until next time, stay healthy and all the best.
Hi, I'm Nusa Ayari, CEO of the LEAF Initiative.
And I'm Jörg Schäfer, founder and CEO Europe. Together,
we thank you for watching the Saloon.
I want to ask you to check out our YouTube channel and our website.
Stay tuned and do not hesitate to reach out to us.